Hey guys, welcome to Expertise Academy. So on this one, we're going to see AutoCAD layers. So I have to finish this AutoCAD tutorial series because it's been neglected for a while, so I need to finish it. And one reason is even for the plugin development for AutoCAD, Civil 3D, and most of the stuff we need AutoCAD basics. And some of the things is most of the basic tutorials that you see in AutoCAD is for drafters. So if you're going to be a plugin developer or if you're going to be like an expert Civil 3D guy, it's good to know the basic AutoCAD tricks from a developer perspective and from a Civil 3D drafter perspective, designer perspective. So which is quite different. So most of the tutorials are done by AutoCAD drafters for AutoCAD drafters. So as I said, Civil 3D is actually a AutoCAD based product vertical. So a lot of things that you use in AutoCAD, we can actually use it for Civil 3D for enhanced design elements. So which I will actually walk you through. So layers is something very important, because if you're writing a plugin in AutoCAD or Civil 3D, or even working on standard Civil 3D as a designer, you can use layers to lot of tiny little things, and then it actually helps you to control things in very different ways. So first now we will see what layers are and what layers can do, what are the different things. It's going to be a decent sized topic for this video, so let's try and cover it. And also just little thing, guys, I'm going to do regular videos from now on. Just subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends. I need a bit of motivation. And also I'll be starting a website which will be expertiseracademy.com. I'll be adding more tutorials in there as well, not just CAD. We will be having programming tutorials, AWS, and a lot of different CDs as well. Just feel free to jump into any of them and then give it a go. All right, let's get into it. So we have some sample drawings here for us to just try and break it down, and we're going to use this to test different things on the layers. So what is layers? In traditional terms, previously when drafters were using drafting boards, they will be drawing everything on a paper. So whenever there is a correction, whenever there is something they need to show design options and things like that, they have to create multiple paper drawings. It took so much time, so much man hours, and a lot of human errors. To avoid that, what they started doing is they had one base paper, which will be like a big A1 sheet, which will have all the basic elements such as floor plan and plinth areas and carpet area configuration, everything that is basic. It's not going to change, structural elements and stuff like that. And on top of it, they'll have something like a transparent sheet, plastic sheet. On top of it, in the plastic sheet, they draw the electrical layout, plumbing layout, and stuff like that. So that way they can always go back and change just the top layers, not the base paper sheet, so which saves quite a lot of time. So that's how the drafters used to do it, using drafting boards and stuff like that. When AutoCAD was brought into business 30 years ago, so the layers were one of the highly anticipated and highly appreciated feature, so which generally controls the drafter to control what information that needs to be displayed and what information that needs to be hidden. So this is not just for the display of the drafter, this is even for the printing. So if you want to just see some objects just for designing purposes, but you don't want that to be printed, we can do that. So there is a lot of things that we can do with the layers. So now let's get into it. So first thing is, let's get into layer properties manager. It's under the home tab, and there is a separate panel for layers. You can see some of the additional tools up here. We'll get into layer properties manager. In here on the left side, you can see the layer filters, and then you can see list of all the layers here. So you can see which layer is your current layer. You can see that which has got a tick sign in it, and then that's your layer names. And then you can see the layers on and off. And then there is a button to freeze layers and lock layers and a lot of different things. So let's quickly run through some of these things. So now what is layers? So now you can see what is the current layer that is in. So you can choose that and you can go and draw an object. So when you do that, that object goes into that layer. So now if I try and hide it, so this is I'll change to a different layer. And now if I try to hide it, so that object is gone from the drawing, but it's still there. So whenever you want it, you can bring it back again. So that is some of the cool things that you can do with layers. So you can actually add objects to layers that you want to have. And next we have another button, which is like a freeze layer. So when you click on it, it does sort of similar. So it's like it hides the object from you. And what's the difference between turning off a layer and then freezing a layer? So they're both sort of doing the same thing. A lot of people get confused with these ones. So turning off a layer, which basically hides it from you, but the computer still see it. The computer still do all the mathematics and everything that it has to do to put the object on the screen. Whereas freezing a layer will actually freeze the object in such a way that you cannot see it, the computer cannot see it. So even the computers don't see those objects. So it doesn't even do any calculations to put that object even behind the screen and stuff. So what is the difference? What it's going to make? So one difference is turning off a layer, your computer works and uses the same amount of memory and CPU. When you freeze it off, your computer uses a lot less memory and CPU depending on how many objects you're freezing. So why do we use it now? This is a feature. It was invented. It was quite useful few years ago. The reason being is most of our computers doesn't have enough RAM and CPU. So that way, when you're handling a lot of large drawings, when you try to so those times, the RAM and CPU were not that good. So most of the computers had around 4 gigs RAMs and stuff like that. Most of that is taken by the operating system and AutoCAD on top of it. So people have to free up some space to work. So that's the reason the freeze was brought in. And now if you see, most of the computers has got 16 to 32 gig and even more. So in that case, people don't even know the difference, what's it's going to make for turning off and freezing. But if you have a heavy drawing, it has got a lot of objects, and if you don't need it all the time, you can put it into a layer and you can freeze it, and you can unfreeze it whenever you want it, which actually makes your computer a bit faster if your computer is getting slowed down because of the heavy drawings and stuff. And so now let's get into another one, which is called lock a layer. So I'm going to unfreeze this particular center layer, and now we can say, like, I can select the object, I can delete it, I can do whatever I want with that object. So now, moment I actually turn this lock symbol on, you can see that I cannot even select it, I cannot delete this object, I cannot do anything with that object. So the lock basically protects your object from moving it accidentally or deleting it. So that's the purpose of the lock. And apart from that, there is a color option as well. So you can select it and you can change the color, and which change the color of the object. And so now let's go into the layer properties manager, where you can see a bit more additional features in here. So we have seen the turning off, freezing, and then the lock feature, and then the color. So next one is going to be line type. So that's like, you can select it. Let's say we go into the center, and you can see there are different line types that you can load it. That's like if you want to print a dash lines or dotted lines and things like that. So that's your line type. If you want to have more, you can click on load, and you can you can even do your own line type with the .lnn5, which I will do it in a separate tutorial. And or you can pick a whole bunch of line types that's already in there, and that will bring it to the screen. And next one is your line weight. So the line weight is the thickness of the line. So the line type is basically the design of the line, and the line weight is basically the thickness of the line. So if you want a thicker line, and if you want a thinner line and stuff like that, you can use that. And remember, guys, even though you have turned on all of these things, sometimes you may not be able to see those things. So let's say I'm going to change this one to something like this, and then the line weight I'm going to change to something like this. Now let's close this one, but you can see that you're not able to see it, and sometimes it may be just the graphic card playing some tricks. So in that case, you have to type in a command called REA, region all, and that would actually refresh the entire drawing, redraw all the objects on the screen. So if the graphic card, which is actually the one which is causing the trouble, then it actually releases those things, but still you're not able to see it. So for that, one thing we have to do is, in your status bar, you got a tool called LW display. So that is a line weight display. So when you click on it, it actually shows the object with the actual line weight. And sometimes if you don't see those tools that I'm showing here, you can go to this little hamburger icon on the bottom right corner, and then you can see a whole bunch of tools that's there. Sometimes it may not be checked in. So just turn them on so that you can see them in your status bar. So this is called your status bar. So now that's basically it. So if you click on it, you can see the line thickness in it. And to see the line type, you need to change the line type scale so that you can change it. So it's a like LT scale. I think the command is LT scale, and you can say 0.125. Maybe we need to adjust it a bit more. LT scale. Here we go. So you can see that now it is actually showing the line type. So this is basically the line type scale that you are adjusting. So let's get back into the layer. So we have seen line type, line weight, and then transparency. So if you want to adjust some transparency of these objects, it is not just the lines you're looking at it, and sometimes you might have AutoCAD 3D, sometimes you might have some of the other different objects that you might have also have it in the layers. So anything that you change the transparency, the object becomes a little bit translucent, so it's like a bit more transparency in there. So right now 0 specifies it's completely opaque, so you'll not be able to see objects which is underneath. So if you want to see the objects underneath, you need to change it to some lower transparency level so you can see it. And plot style, so this we will see it probably when we go to printing, and then plot. So if you actually see that the first layer, which is your so there is a 0 layer in there, DefPoints in there, and then viewports layer. There are some layers you can see that it's by default of the template, it's actually turned off for the plot, in the sense you will not be able to print those layers. Objects in the layers you will not get printed. So any objects that's in there you are just using it for reference, or some text that you're using it for designing and drafting and stuff like that, you can put that into non-plot. So that way they don't accidentally get printed when you actually print those drawings. So that's one way of doing it. And the next one is your viewport freeze. So for now we just have one viewport. If you have multiple viewports, we can actually freeze it on any of the viewports that you don't want that object to be shown. We will see that again in a separate tutorial when we talk about viewports. It's actually another chapter as well. So that's overall basic things. You can edit your name, description, and things like that. You can always do that. And one way it is going to be useful is if you give a proper name and a description. It always helps you if you're building a plugin. You can actually screen them based on the data that's in the description and names. And other little things, little tricks in here. If you want to have some of the layers on the top, you can create, let's say if you want to create a new layer, you can click on this button, it creates a new layer. So I'm going to call this one as let's say floor plan, and then say let's say based on name. So you can see it's in the middle. So if you have hundreds and thousands of layers, AutoCAD can have actually 10,000 overlays. It can have plenty of layers. So virtually no limit. So if you have some names which is going to be dropped down in probably in the middle of the list or bottom of the list, you have to scroll through each of the time. So if you don't want that to happen, you want that layer to be on the top of the list, you can rename it, and then you can put a little underscore in the front, and then it generally goes to the top. So that way it's always on the top. So one of the things that we can also do is we can create filters. So now we can see like all filters are turned on. So now that is the reason if I go here, it will generally shows all the layers. But some of the layers you may not be using it sometimes because the drawing is a collaborative drawing. You're using with the architects, plumbers, and electricians and civil. So you're just a civil guy. You want to focus in your objects, which is your civil. So you don't want to touch your architectural layers and stuff. So what people can do is they can create something called filters. So there are two types of filters here. One is your property filter, another one is your group filter. So I can just, let me first create a property filter. I'm going to call this one as civil, and I'm going to add some civil layers in here. So I'm going to say the civil layers will start with anything that will say SIV. SIV. So that means all I have to do is I just have to create layers with a prefix as civil. So next I'm going to create another one which will be having a name which will be arc, which is architecture. So that layer will go into okay, forgot to name it. So it's going to be architectural layers, and that's going to be in here. So now I'm going to create another property filter, and this one is going to be based on color. So I'm going to say this one is like anything which is in yellow. So let's choose this one. And so it's going to be yellow objects. So anything that's the color is yellow, the layers will also be inside the that particular filter. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create some layers, and then we're going to see if that filters are working. So I'm going to create the first layer. So I'm going to call this one as civil SIV underscore. And this is going to be surface, natural surface, and then another one. So this is going to be SIV underscore structural. Maybe we already have civil, so we'll have drainage, sewage, Okay, so if you go to civil, and you can see it shows those ones. So now if you select all of them, and then if you close this box here, it's going to show all the layers that you have created. But if you're a civil guy, so as soon as you come in, you're just going to work on only the civil layers. You're not going to bother about rest of the layers. So you can select civil and then close the box, and then if you come back here, you will see all the civil layers. So that's an advantage of creating a filter. So next one, you can create a group filter. So I'm going to call this one as let's say electrical, and I can create layers under that. So this is going to be electrical layout, and then I can give it colors and stuff like that. I can create additional layers, and this is going to be electrical design, and give it a different color just so we can see colors. Okay, so this is like same as a property filter. So only difference is you create layers under that. So the property filters, you need to define some attribute information to go and filter those layers and put it in there. So it's automatic. So that means like if you go back in there, if I create SIV layers anytime, or architectural layers, let's say if I create ARCH underscore roof design something, and then if I go to architecture, so they will find that. So that means you don't have to go back and change what's in there. So it's anytime you create a layer with that particular prefix or any of those attribute that's matching, it automatically goes in there. The same with the yellow layer as well. We created another one which is got a yellow color. So now let's say this is going to be warnings. So anything that's in the inspection that the guys find by the site manager, he's going to put it in there. So it's going to be, the color is going to be yellow. Click OK. And the yellow object will automatically come here. So that means every time there is a warning that goes into the inspection report or something like that, they just turn it into yellow color and it will automatically comes up here, something like this. So let's see, like the property filter basically makes it a bit more automated, and the group filter, you need to go and put the specific layers in there for that to be grouped together. So that's a two different ways of filtering your layers. And the next one is there is few little things here which may be really helpful. So now let's say we got plenty of different objects in different layers. So now we don't want to be touching or editing accidentally the other objects. So one way of doing it is, let's say we can go and let's go and choose all layers. Okay. And I'm going to choose all, and then I'm going to choose this one. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we got all the layers in here. So now there is too many objects in here, but our focus is only on working on let's say this white color object. So we don't want to touch any of the objects. We don't want to edit or delete any of the other objects. So what's the best way to do is there is something called layer isolate. So if you go to this one here, there is a tool called isolate. So you select it and then go and pick the object, that layer that belongs to, you click on it and then press enter. And then only that object you will be able to see on the drawing. So rest of the objects are automatically frozen and kept away, so you're not actually accidentally touching them or editing them. So now you can do whatever you do with that and then come back again. Once you're done with all your editing, there is another button that says unisolate. You click on it, the objects comes back to normal. So that's your the same way there is other tools here which says freeze, which will freeze the objects in the complete layer, and make current will make whatever the layer this is in. Let's say for right now the title block is a current layer. So now click on this one, and then this layer, whatever the object this layer is in, that layer will become the current layer. So now if you draw any object, so that will be from this particular layer. And match layer, so it's like now we say there is one object here, so I want to put this into the title block layer. So what I'll do is I click on match layer. So now it is saying that select the object. So this is going to be the object. I think it is locked. Okay, let's unlock it. Okay, so now I'm going to select match layer. So I'm going to match this one with match layer. So I have selected this object and then I want to match with this layer. So this object moves into that particular layer. Simple. This is one easy command, guys. Match properties, match layer. So this is one easy command and it actually saves quite a lot of time. And similarly, there are a lot of other little tools here. So one is previous, undo the last change that you've done to your layer settings, and that doesn't change the object things that you have done, just the layer settings. And change to current layer, so which will just change the layer properties of the selected object to the current layer. So right now I will say this is my current layer, and then I will select on this one, change to current layer, and then I click on this one, press enter. So that object will move into the current layer, which just makes it a bit more easier. And then delete layer. So you select it, and generally whenever you delete it, the objects within the layer also get deleted. And another few little things here. So when you try to delete it, so let's say this is the one I'm going to delete it. It doesn't let me delete it. Why? Because there is three different things you need to know under. First is a zero layer. There is something which is created by default, which you cannot delete it, rename it. There is another layer called DefPoints, which is created. So what happens is if you go to the layer properties manager, you see there is a DefPoints here. So when you try to delete this one, delete layer, so it says that layer 0 and DefPoints cannot be deleted, the current layer cannot be deleted, layers containing objects cannot be deleted, xref dependent layers cannot be deleted. So that's a sort of like a thumb rule. So when you try to delete a layer which has got some objects, it doesn't let you do it. You have to clear off the objects before you deleting the layer. And same goes for if it's a current layer, you cannot delete it. Zero layers, DefPoints, you cannot delete it. So what is this DefPoints? And zero layer and DefPoints you should never draw, guys. Zero layers of creating blocks, and DefPoints is like whenever you create your first dimension, it actually creates a layer called DefPoints, and after that you cannot delete your DefPoints layer. So the dimension, as long as it's in the drawing, there are sort of like imaginary reference lines that's in there, so like invisible reference lines in there, so they go into DefPoints layer, which you cannot see it. This is used by AutoCAD, and so that's the reason DefPoints layer exists. This is not for you to create dimensions. A lot of drafters generally do that. They create dimensions within DefPoints. Never do that, guys. So that layer is not for that purpose. And DefPoints, another thing is like if you create something in the DefPoints, you cannot even print it. So it don't get printed. All right. So I think we covered quite a lot. I don't want this tutorial to be too long, so I don't want to get people bored of it. I think we did actually go through a lot of these things. So last little thing is like there is something called ByLayer and ByBlock. So ByLayer basically uses anything that you specify in this panel, so those properties get used up. So if you change something here, the object will automatically change. So that's basically ByLayer. So ByBlock is like when you create a block, whatever the things that you specify, the colors, the line type, anything like that, so that comes from the block property. So it doesn't come from the layer. It doesn't, even if you change the layer color and stuff like that, the block will not change colors. So that's basically the difference between ByLayer and ByBlock. Maybe we have to do a separate video on that. We would do that. And hopefully I covered a lot of these things with the layers. And I think we'll catch up again in another video. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel, guys, and give some motivation so I do some regular videos. I have another channel called Ask Raghulan, and it's a Tamil channel, but there is also an English version of it. I do quite a lot of videos, and I've done over 700 videos in the last year, so just got little doped in it. So now this one I'm gonna plan this year to do quite a lot of videos on this one. So yeah, so just keep me posted. If you got any questions and stuff, I'll try to answer it, and we'll catch up in the next video. Thanks, guys.